Welcome back to the fourth and final part of the third set of lectures. I want to talk just briefly about whether psychological egoism, which is an empirical theory, is it confirmed scientifically. And this is the reason is that if psychological egoism were true and people could only act in their own self-interest, they couldn't act outside of their self-interest, then no other ethical theory is really going to work because people will be unable to fulfill the demands of that theory. So they will not be able to be just or consider everybody's interest in utilitarianism or be virtuous or whatever because they're determined by their psychology and science to be to only act in their own self-interest. They would not in some way be morally accountable for their actions because that's the only way they can act. Now there's we probably in our everyday life have lots of reason to suspect that psychological egoism is not true. For example, people often will tip when they visit a restaurant out of town. It's not like they're trying to curry the waitress's favor or worried that next time they come the waitress will spit in their soup or something. They people just feel that it's fair. They have to, they have to add to this the waiter or waitress's salary. And there's another interesting case, the ultimatum game, which is a tool of this new field of behavioral economics. Behavioral economics is a scientific discipline which examines the assumptions of regular economics. And regular economics assumes that people are psychological egoists. Behavioral economics tries to devise experiments to see whether this is true. And one of the experiments they have done is the ultimatum game. Here are the rules. We have a referee, we have a proposer, and we have a decider. Okay, the referee, I've actually done this in a non-virtual class, so I'm the referee. I have offered $10 coins to a random student chosen from the audience. Somebody who volunteers. The volunteer can then offer any amount of those $10 coins that I've given to him or her, any amount between 1 or 10 to another person who's also volunteered from another student who's volunteered from the audience, who is the decider. And the proposer, the first student, gets to keep how much she doesn't give away. If the other student, the one who gets to decide, accepts the offer, then the decider gets to keep whatever the offer is, X, let's say, $3, whatever, and the the proposing student gets to keep 10 minus X, which would be $7. And if the decider rejects the offer, then they each give nothing. They have to give the money back to me. I've run this a couple of times in classes, various classes, and I've given out saved up $10 coins, and I've given them to a student, and that student has always offered 5 coins to the decider. Now, what's going on here? If the proposer were a psychological egoist, then the proposer would want to offer just $1. That's the minimum amount. They want to keep the most for themselves. And if the proposer thinks that the decider is a psychological egoist, then the proposer will think that the decider, the second student, will accept that $1, since giving something is better than nothing. If the decider doesn't accept that $1 offer, then the decider gets nothing. So the question is, will the decider act not in self-interest, but out of some other motive to kind of punish the proposer for what the proposer has done, for offering a less than egalitarian offer? And if the decider is a psychological egoist, then the decider will offer $1. Okay, that follows from these 2 points here. But, and this is where the scientific stuff comes in, behavioral economists have shown that most offers are in the 50-50 range, and that offers that are not 50-50 get rejected. Okay, so something's going on here. People are not behaving like psychological egoists. They're generous and fair, and they want to give half to the decider, or they fear that the decider will be vengeful if they don't, and will actually turn down the offer, turn down, say, $2 in order to punish the proposer. Now this suggests that psychological egoism is not the sort of viewpoint of either the proposer and the decider. In different cultures, different places, these games play out, and if that's if psychological egoism is not the generally true, then it makes other forms of ethical theory plausible, and it makes it possible to hold people accountable for not acting in their self-interest. That they must, if they do act in their self-interest and it hurts other people, then they can be held accountable. Okay, so here is the final question of the final part of this lecture. Who is likely to get the highest payoff in an ultimatum game? Pause the video and think about this. We have a social activist and an economist. Let's imagine this is some sort of global justice advocate who thinks that the income inequality in the world is way out of line, and we should save the whales, and so on. And the economist is an economics student, somebody who's taken 2 or 3 economics courses, and they have learned about indifference curves and budget lines and how people behave. Okay, so who's like to get the biggest payoff in this ultimatum game? Okay, well let's think through this. The social activist, we'll say, is a justice, fairness advocate, and they're not going to propose an unjust amount to the economist. Okay, so we'll probably get a 50-50 here. An economist proposing to a social activist is going to know that this social activist is the sort of person who believes in fairness and equality and global justice and local justice too, and they're going to think, well, if I don't give a 50-50 offer or something very close, it's going to be turned down. So we're going to get a 50-50 offer here. What about a social activist proposing to a social activist? Well, the same thing. The social activist is going to probably, out of their own way of thinking about the world, are going to propose a 50-50 offer, and the other social activist isn't going to accept anything other than a 50-50 offer. So these are all 50-50 offers on this side here. What about, so these ones here are all 50-50, we will say. What about here? An economist proposing to an economist. Well, this is different, right? Because the economist is going to think, well, I should propose, as you know, I'm a self-interested person. This is the way people behave. I'm going to propose the highest possible payment to myself. I'm going to keep $9. I'm only going to offer another $1 to this other economist. This other economist is going to reason, well, $1 is better than nothing. They're not going to, miss that $1 in order to punish me. So the division here is probably going to be 9 to 1. So the answer would be, who is the most likely? I mean, who knows? People are different, but given what we know about social activists and economists, then answer D is probably the most likely in an ultimatum game. Okay, bye for now.